Hello, good morning. Good morning, Texas and Louisiana. Good morning, David Porter, and
Yes,
good morning, world. How are you, David?
everything is going well. I'm doing fantastic here in the beautiful country, lovely island of Texas. Ireland. Hello, Texas. Ireland's funny. I didn't expect to see palm trees, but they have palm trees here. And
Palm trees are kind of funny. They have them in a lot of places. Georgia was always one of the ones that surprised me. I was like, wait, palm trees in Georgia? I remember being a kid being like, palm trees in Georgia? Palm trees in
yeah,
Georgia? There's a lot of
the
palm trees. There's a lot of palm trees in Georgia. Georgia, South.
that's right on the border there of where they grow in the U.S.
It
That's
is.
one of the northernmost regions. But this cold island where it's cold year round, I just didn't expect to see the palm trees, but they are here, and everything grows luscious. It's very, very luscious soil here.
It
It's
is,
been
right?
quite wet. It's
That is one thing that strikes me about the area there. Very luscious, very
My
luscious.
neighbor says you drop a seed and it's gonna grow.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, we have a lot. There is a lot going on today. We have Julian Assange, of course, is in court. They are deciding his fate. I reached out to Stella, his wife, Stella Assange. Stella and I have followed each other on X for a few years now, back when 2015, 2016. And we also, in a couple other places. But of course, she's, I'm sure, quite distressed. She gave a speech a little bit yesterday. Maybe I'll play it. And then as well, they're all in front of the court right now. I did put up a feed. We'll bring that feed in a bit. And the Supreme Court or the Royal Court or however you call it is supposed to make a decision today on whether he can go back to Australia, the great Julian Assange, whether he can go back to Australia or if he's going to be extradited to the U.S. One of the things that they're using in evidence is that the CIA has been trying to kill him. Shouldn't laugh.
Right.
It's horrible. So they're saying there's no way he's going to get a fair trial over here if he even lives long enough to get to trial, which is probably true.
Yeah, that's pretty scary stuff for him, and the great work he's done.
It's
It's
unbelievable.
it's not like he went out and leaked good information. He leaked all the stuff that people need to know, and the darkness
People
comes
need
to
to
light.
know. Look, we should not be. There's a reason why we have war crimes, and as horrible as war is, as countries, we all agree to conduct war in a way that is honorable, and
Yeah,
that's the way it works, guys. And
yep. For the
one of those,
betterment of
if
the people.
yeah, and if you don't follow those rules, then you should be held accountable. And that is just something among men as well, and women, I guess, but historically men with these types of situations, you got to have some honor to what you're doing. If not, then you're probably not going to last too long, I suppose. But they are doing a 24/7 coverage over there. I am going to bring that feed in. Big Trump had a town hall. Big Trump had a town hall last night. We're also going to play some of that. Pretty interesting stuff coming out of there. He said last night, he said a lot of interesting things. One of the things that he said that really struck me was about the mail-in voting, which of course is a touchy subject. Even we have to be careful what we say on the air because, of course, we stream. It's not really on TV. Our owner here with the network, you guys say whatever you want, just don't curse. Okay, just don't curse. And that's to our good
Love
people
it.
there in Texas and Louisiana. But on the different platforms that we stream on, we have to be careful because they'll nick our stuff and they'll put warnings on it and everything else. So, but Trump said what he said was that there is no way
They
that you
also
can
have a
have.
case going.
What's that?
No, it's okay. Go tell us about Trump.
So he says that you cannot have mail-in ballots without there being fraud. There's going to be fraud if you have mail-in ballots. And whether that's true or not, I'm not making that claim myself personally right now. Okay, but that's what he said last night in the town hall. And the girl comes back. I think it was Laura Ingraham, and she comes back and she says, "Well, what are you doing to stop it? How are you going to stop this this fraud or this cheating that's going on?" And he says, "Well, we're going to swamp. We're going to do it by swamping. We're going to swamp the vote." And I'll tell you what, I have everybody knows I'm pretty openly, I'm a Trump guy. I have been a Trump guy since the beginning. I live in a very heavy Democrat area, so to be totally frank, my vote is meaningless. I was talking to one of my friends about it the other day. I was like, I know that I'm supposed to go vote and everything else. I was like, but like literally, the Democrats win my county by like 36 points. I looked at the congressional seat because I thought, oh, maybe let me just look, see what the congressional seat looks like. 36 points he won by. I'm in a heavy Democrat area. Number one, it's a very affluent area. And then number two, we brought in a lot of, or they have as well brought in a lot of different new migrant communities. And the thing about the migrant communities is there are, a lot of them, not take anything bad about it, but migrant communities these days are very much reliant on money from the government. And they are going to, in large numbers, vote to keep those benefits. So their survival of themselves and their family and everything else. And it's really hard to fault them for it. I mean, if you want to step back and just look at it and say, well, all right, I get it.
Yeah, it's a paycheck.
Yeah, you're in a foreign country.
If everybody wants to be an American, then start listening to the Americans.
Right. But I mean, let's say you're getting, they're getting housing, they're getting medical. Many of them, they're getting housing, medical, and a stipend. It's hard to, it's hard to turn that down. It's hard to turn that down for people, especially in today's economy. I'll tell you that. We're going on to commercial in Smart Money Culture TV. We'll be right back. We're going to have Matt Dixon with us when we return. He has a great show lined up talking about money. Bitcoin took a bit of a slide this morning. I've been kind of waiting for that. It doesn't mean it's going to continue to happen. I do think there's a little bit of funny business going on. Funny business, a relative term. Trump always used to tell us that China, they were master currency manipulators. That's what he would always say. They're master currency manipulators. Mm-hmm. And they have printed up a ton of money over the last little bit. The Hong Kong Stock Exchange was up over 3% yesterday for a little bit, overnight, I should say. And I just think that they may do a push up. You had a lot of the ETFs buying in yesterday. You had actually a pump yesterday on Bitcoin as the ETFs bought in. Some of the ETFs bought in, and I just wonder if that's going to now have a nice deep pullback. We'll see. It is a bull market, but remember the 4 stages of the 4 phases of the halving that I spoke about as well. So we are due a pullback. But how smart if China pumps a lot of money into the economy, they pump their stocks up, they as well push Bitcoin up, they make the ETFs and everybody buy in higher, they sell their coins higher, and then of course we have this pullback that is kind of scheduled. The way it works, guys, is we have a run up. This is normally the way it works on a halving. We have a run up on the Bitcoin price, okay? And then about 60 days ahead of the actual halving, which is where we are about right now. I think we're at 61 days. We have a pullback, and that pullback usually will last a few weeks. It'll last some time. It'll last long enough to scare out a lot of people, liquidate a lot of people. It'll be long enough and deep enough. It was 38% pullback 8 years ago, and it was a 20% pullback 4 years ago. So that is now in the same breath, there's a lot of money coming in. There's so much money coming in that you say, well, we'll see. But that's smart money. That's not just retail money. There's a lot of retail money coming in, but that's not the big money is smart money. These guys are hawks. these guys, they know what they're doing. Okay, they really know what they're doing. So we're going to bring Matt here in about 2 minutes. So I just wanted to again just touch on a little bit more on Trump, and then again we're going to go to the live feed and everything with Julian Assange. If I can get Stella on,
yeah, Stella would be great. You also have Craig Wright there dealing with COPA. I think it's a case in London.
We have Craig right there. He's dealing with the Copacabana. Oh, no, not that one?
Yeah, so it's a pretty big case. We'll see how he turns out. I don't have a specific update, but I'm reading up on it.
You're reading up on it. So Craig Wright claims that he is Satoshi. And we know Craig Wright. David interviewed Craig at least once. We've seen him and met him a few different times. He's a pretty funny guy. I think that he was there in the beginning, whether he's Satoshi or not. Whatever. But I think that that case is interesting. But it's like I always say, even if he wins that case, Bitcoin is still going to continue. Like the old Bitcoin is still going to continue, even if they have to change it into a new Bitcoin. That old Bitcoin is still going to continue, and that's what I always talk about. But it is an interesting case, a lot of eyes on it. He's trying to say that he owns the trademarks and everything for Bitcoin, and that the different that people can't use Bitcoin.
It has a lot to do with keeping your personal data versus a censored type of data as well.
Oh, well, there you go, David.
So it's
you can tell us more. You know more about it than me. I've always just kind of shrugged the whole thing. We are back on Smart Money Culture TV. I'll tell you what, we have been gaining a lot of traction there in Texas and Louisiana. We thank all you guys for listening in. We're getting a lot of good feedback from people on the ground. Fly Mackey promised us, he says, look, guys, you guys just keep doing what you're doing. It'll take a couple of months. And then as you start to penetrate in that market and those people get used to seeing you, they're going to listen and watch every day. So that's absolutely what's been happening. You know who else has been getting a lot of press is our main man here, Matt Dixon. They love Matt. Matt, how are you?
Thank you. Good morning. Not too bad, thank you. Pleasure to be here again. So, yeah, it's been interesting watching crypto. It's good after yesterday. We did mention that there's potential for a bit of a pullback, and we mentioned that on most of the charts, that there seems to be correction down, correction up, so expected to move down. So it's probably, I know we're going to just discuss a little bit about, some of the techniques that we can use within trading. And it'd be great to discuss that, because I've been, as you know, trading for so many years now that I picked up a few little bits and pieces here and there that can be useful. So I'll just jump on very quickly though. First of all, I mean, I assume you can see my screen there again.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. So I was talking yesterday about we'd had this move down, which is 3 waves down. And this was actually across the whole board. We looked at the altcoins yesterday, and it's actually across the board of crypto pretty well in general. The only one that's really standing out right now is a couple, actually. BNB up 3%, and I can see eBay's up 3%. The rest of the market's down quite heavily. So in general, this is the pattern that's being followed. And as I said before, you have impulses which are non-overlapping waves, like this wave here. You can see the big green candles, and then an ending diagonal here for this wave. So that being an A wave, and then we get a B wave down to complete this bit. So what I'm saying is the move across here is consolidation, correction from the high. It was really interesting. You mentioned, Bruce, yesterday that there's actually a jump up on Bitcoin. I was watching that whilst it happened, and this green candle, it moved up very, very rapidly and just broke the previous high, the recent local high that we had here. And I think a lot of people were saying, wow, we're just breaking higher again. But it was kind of like, it's reminiscent of market makers just squeezing out the people who are basically short in the market. Because I was saying,
what it looks like.
Next expectation from here was that the market was going to go down. But what they do is, so often they spike the price higher, whether it's through buying, whatever methods they use, but spike the price higher. So all those people who were in here with stop losses just above, who were short the market with stop losses above, we're basically stopped out.
You talked about that yesterday. You said there actually was a higher level than you thought of short positions.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's right. So the market makers know where people are positioned. I mean, they can actually see better than anybody. Like, as we said before, you're playing poker with them, and yet they can see your hand. So you're
Right.
at a little bit of a disadvantage when they can
Yeah,
see
just a little.
exactly what you're holding, what your leverage is if you're leveraged, where your stop loss is, where your take profit is. They can see your hand completely. And so they have computer systems that can work out how do we need to move the price to collect their money. And if they can see a stop loss, for example, just above a previous high, which is a logical place to put your stop loss. And
Yep.
another reason why you shouldn't put your stop losses too close to your risk reward barrier. Otherwise you get stopped out. And then the market moved down, and in quite dramatic fashion, really. We're still, looks like we're on a bit of a down move at the moment. And so I've got it labeled A, B, and I would expect normally a C wave would be at least equal to this A wave down here. So if we transpose, we're expecting we could potentially be close to a finish, close to a turnaround. But remember, we've got that news out tonight. The Fed minutes are being released tonight.
What time is that at? Do you know Eastern Standard, or what your time?
It's 11 Dubai time. Bearing in mind, right now we're talking it's 3:30 Dubai time, so it's 11 Dubai time. So
I'll do the math real quick.
So that's 7.5 hours from now. So whatever your time is now, plus 7.5 hours, that's the release of the Fed minutes.
It's 11 p.m. I think it's 2 p.m. But
2 p.m. Makes sense.
Yeah, sounds about right. 7 hours from now.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's just a quick look at Bitcoin. One of the ones probably even more interesting we looked at again, we measured this is the S&P 500. We measured 5 waves down, a beautiful 5 waves down with a wave 3 exactly equal to 2.618 times wave 1. Perfect Fibonacci relationship there. Then we've got this corrected move higher with bits of overlap on the way. Very choppy as compared with this really impulsive move. And I said that when we turned here, and I said I'm expecting a turn without us reaching a new all-time high. And that's precisely what happened. So this was when we got the CPI news out, which tanked the market. Then we got a bit of a recovery, but we didn't break that previous high there. And we started to move down again. And you would expect, as a minimum, for this move down to at least be equal to this move down here. So we would expect somewhat lower. And in fact, the minimum target I would have would be 4918. So still quite a bit of a move down potentially to come. And that's assuming it's just a simple ABC where the C equals the A move. This could potentially be the beginning of a new impulse to the downside. So I'm just saying as a minimum move, that's what I would expect. I wouldn't jump. Sorry?
49 is what you said, right?
Yeah, 49.18 would be the potential target there. That would be a minimum target, but I wouldn't jump into a trade from here. The time to jump into this trade from risk reward perspective was right up here, and with your stop loss just above the previous high. Not too tightly above, because remember what happened with Bitcoin? They spiked the price and took out all those stop losses. So it will be just somewhere above the previous high. So a small potential loss, but we can already see massive potential gain if you've gone short the market. But now we're in what I call no man's land. We're very much middle of the road here. And, I wouldn't be taking a fresh trade from here. So there are really important times to take your trade. And it's actually when you take into account the risk reward ratio. And that's what would determine when you take your trade. So that's quickly, we can look at any assets, any other assets. I mean, here's Solana again. Most people didn't expect this down move on Solana, but we were expecting it. We can move on to the daily there and just expand that out a little bit. Not too much. And we can basically see that potentially we've had, from the previous high there that we had, not the all-time high, but the local high, top of a wave 5. It's actually part of a bigger wave 3 that we can see here. So that's telling us that likely more upside to come later, but short term, we've got an A wave down, a B wave up, and we expect a C wave down, probably to take us down to maybe in the 70s, the low 70s for Solana. So if that's true, and if this works out, then quite a bit lower to go, but then we should push up to highs above this previous high. So that's what I've been expecting. Again, it's a little bit no man's land. I wouldn't be jumping into trades right now because we've got this important news out tonight with the Fed minutes. I'd certainly wait to see what happens there before jumping in. But even within that I've discussed today, there's a few little pointers really on how people can trade effectively for profit. And I think it'd be good if, I don't know, if we can discuss just a little bit, a few of the things that I have learned along the way from trading.
Please.
Yeah, so I'll just
looking over your notes here. Amazing.
Yeah, so I'll just unshare because we can just chat that through if you like.
Sure.
I mean, some of the things that I've picked up along the way. Obviously, you need to have a strategy. So if you think about anything you do, if you don't plan, you're not going to achieve your objective. If you're throwing darts at a dartboard, you actually need a strategy. You need to aim, etc. To know where you're aiming. Same with any sport. Basically, there's a goal or something you're trying to achieve. So you need to actually have a strategy to achieve that. And you'd be surprised how many people go into trading just thinking, oh, I've heard that one's a good one, I'm going to buy that, I hope it pumps, without any real strategy. This is actually a serious game.
Never done
that.
It's
me
about,
either. No,
yeah.
Never buy the
and
hype.
retail traders in particular tend to go in without a proper strategy. They just go in on, they heard something or the market's going up and they basically do a punt. And it's effectively a gamble for most people. But actually, if you want to be serious about this and making money, you actually take the gamble out of it and you turn it into a proper strategy which can make you money. And the other thing which I may have suffered from in the early days, I made a lot of money in the early 1980s and I had a strategy which worked really well. I made a lot of money in the early 80s, but perhaps got overconfident. I was leveraging in the market. I was making money hand over fist. My bank manager was even asking me how I'm making so much money. And I perhaps got a little bit overconfident. And that is one of the big problems that people have. And I know at the moment, even new people perhaps coming into trading, there's been a bit of a run up in crypto since the little fall we had after the ETF approval. And there's been a really nice little run up, people talking bull market, going to the moon, all these things. And, there's a little bit of people becoming overconfident. And I've seen people charting stuff and saying, this is what happened in the last bull run, and it's going to happen again. I've got an almost straight up parabolic chart showing how high the market's going. And
Up only.
Up only, and it's just going to repeat what it did in the past. Well, the past was under different conditions. The last ICO boom was basically an ICO boom where people were throwing money at anything. It was the Wild West. People were going crazy. We're not at that stage now. There's actually a lot more maturity in the market. We've got regulated ETFs. So there's a lot more maturity here. So the market is in a very different place. There are different challenges and different opportunities. And so it doesn't pay to be overconfident just because you made a bit of money. So that brings me on to risk management, because people tend to get ahead of themselves when they've made a nice bit of money in the market. And you need to have really good risk management. And risk management means understanding the market, and that's where having a strategy comes into it, but actually managing the risk. So as I mentioned on a couple of the charts, just look at the risk to the upside, the risk to the downside, and you want to have a stop loss in place that ensures that your losses will be small and your gains are bigger. And the problem is that lots of people do that. They put stop losses reasonably close perhaps and a big take profit, and they think they've got the risk reward just right. But you need to understand the exact level to place your risk and your reward. So where to put your stop losses. It's not just arbitrary saying, oh, I put my stop loss 1% away and I put my take profit 5% away, so I've got 5-to-1 risk reward. That doesn't work. You need to have a strategy to understand where to place your stop losses precisely and where your barrier, what I call barrier really, of risk and reward is. So for example, when you're reaching a previous all-time high, that is a risk reward barrier. And I might look at potentially, if the market was to break above, then I might look at a buy if we break above that level and with a stop loss just below, and vice versa. If I think we're not going to break to a new high, I will put a stop loss just above and basically my order to sell down below. So you can place your risk reward, you can trade either way, you can actually make money in any market, but you need to know where the risk is in the market, where the risk reward barrier is. So that's really important. And then ignoring market trends. The fundamental rule of trading really is trade with the trend. And people don't seem to know how to identify trends. And it's not just as simple as higher highs and higher lows, whilst that is important. There are many other ways we can look at, there's indicators, ADX, there's different indicators you can use to identify market trends, and then how to use those trends, and even know when a trend might come to an end, so you can look at Fibonacci extensions. So there's lots of moving parts in an efficient engine here, an engine that runs your trading strategy. It's like all the jigsaw pieces. You don't get the full picture unless you've got all those jigsaw pieces in place. And then I guess finally, I'm just going through 5 common mistakes that people make. They do emotional trading, and that for me is very linked to the overconfidence bit. The emotional trading, can become emotional in terms of there's greed, fear and greed. You can have too much fear and too much greed, and you can have too little fear and too little greed. You need to be greedy because you want to make money, but not too much greed. So this emotional side of trading, especially when you're a manual trader, but even if you're building trading bots, you need to actually understand the emotion of the market. So it's not just about your own emotion, it's actually about understanding the emotion of the market. So for example, Elliott wave theory is all based on behavioral analysis and how crowds behave as a whole, how a whole crowd behaves, and you're actually understanding the emotion of the market to make your efficient trades, and you're using, you're combining that with other indicators. So there's 5 common mistakes that people make, and five areas that we go into in a lot more detail within our trading course, the Learn How to Trade course. I haven't shared that link. I should have shared it, but
we put it up there.
Okay, you can. Yeah. We're not just trying to sell a course. I'm genuinely passionate about education. I teach people a lot of the time for free. I just want people to learn to do better. As we've said before, 95% of retail traders lose money. We need to turn that around. It's actually in the interest of most exchanges. I say most, not quite all necessarily. It's in the interest of most exchanges for you to lose money. When you're talking about crypto exchanges, when you're talking about FX, platforms, whatever, they're usually trading against you. And that's why I talked about the poker analogy. If they can see your hand, they know how to move markets to collect your money. And most of these exchanges and market makers and so on, they're trading against the retail traders. So you need to learn the way they think. You need to learn all of the techniques to be able to beat them at their game, to understand precisely what their game is. So instead of them actually just seeing your hand, you actually get a kind of view of what their hand is and the way they work and operate. And then you can actually learn to win in this market on a consistent basis, because you don't trade like the typical trader that's driven by all of these factors and mistakes that people traditionally make. As I say, 95% of people losing just isn't good enough. You want to get amongst the 5%, but it takes time and effort and education to become a professional trader and to make money consistently. So
absolutely. Well, check that out. It's learntotrade.club. We have a 10% discount code on that, and that is TradeSmart10. Yeah, 95%. The exchanges can win a bit, but 95% is that's a lot. That's a lot of winning for the exchange. Winning is a relative term, I guess, but
just as a matter of interest, even professional, the big fund managers, they don't outperform the market. But the problem is that retail traders massively underperform the market. And so professional traders can match the market, and they actually manage things in a very professional way. And that's actually, again, what the eBay platform is all about. It's about portfolio building in a professional, sensible, grown-up way to build portfolios that will grow your portfolio over time. It's not about gambling and trading for quick wins. It's nice for us all to get a great pump in the market. That's exciting. And we all have that little gambling pot of money. that we can do that with, that's great fun. It's good to do that. But in general, you need to take actually a professional grown-up approach to investing. And that's kind of what we're trying to promote here.
Yeah, amazing. I'll tell you, the Elliott wave is very interesting. I mean, those numbers that you talk about as well. I mean, learning how to count those waves, learning how that works, I think it brings a lot of clarity to what you're doing, because I mean, we're emotional people, right? The markets are emotional, we're emotional, and you see that pump yesterday and you're like, oh gosh, I better just buy now. I should just buy now, and you're buying at 52 whatever. I mean, just take Bitcoin for an example. You're buying at what possibly could be the local top, and you're in a world of hurt, quite possibly.
It's really interesting, the features that they build into some of these platforms, especially the leverage platform. So one feature they build in is a reverse feature where you can reverse your trade. Now, for example, on that Bitcoin yesterday, they know that retail traders are driven by emotion a lot. And when you see Bitcoin, it was pumping hard into that.
It was pumping hard.
It was pumping hard. A lot of people who may have been short Bitcoin quickly reversed to try and grab hold of that pump. And within a moment, Bitcoin was dropping hard again. And, you might, and you're just so sick of having just switched to go long in the market, and then the market tanks down and you're in loss again.
Yeah, because when you reverse, like, not only you usually, if you hit reverse, first of all, they run the orders for you. So you're going market. You probably have a bit of slippage there, right? So you're probably at a loss anyway. You're up at your stop loss, so you're losing money, and then you have a bad trade, and then you're like, they got me.
And then you fold your arms, drop your head, and you're miserable. And then you go and learn something off the internet. You listen to a YouTube video, and you think, oh, right, I've got it now. And you jump in and have another go, and you fall for the same mistakes. So it's important it's not just about having the information, the knowledge to trade. There's so much information available on the internet. Some is good, some is bad. And it's actually discerning which is good and which is bad. And that's why we put this course together, because it's not just built on my experience. It's actually been peer reviewed by people, by organizations, institutions, to basically verify that the information we're giving is genuine information, which actually can help empower better trading decisions. And it's not just about you being left to decide, is this good, is this bad? It is stuff which works, because I made good money out of the market. I made loads of mistakes in the early days, and I've learned from a lot of those mistakes, and hopefully I'll be able to pass that on.
Well, very good. Well, make sure you check that out, guys. LearnHowToTrade.Club. Always thank you so much for joining us, Matt. We are going to a commercial break here on Smart Money Culture TV. We're going to bring some of the live feed from Assange and talk a little bit more about what's going on in the election here in the U.S. But good stuff. Good stuff, Matt. The 5 common mistakes. I might post those in content a bit later, if that's okay.
That'd be fantastic. Yeah, that'd be good. Thank you. Thanks, David. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, everybody. Pleasure to be here again. Catch you soon.
Cheers. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you. Bye for now.
So I'll tell you, the Assange situation is really heating up, and I'll tell you what, these common mistakes that Matt's talking about. I mean, this is we've all
this is very common mistakes, especially with this crypto run. I mean, I don't think people are doing stocks so desperately as we did crypto.
Yes. I mean, well, and the thing is, the stocks, they move, it's this and that. We're talking, a percent gain, 3%, some massive gain for stocks. I mean, crypto,
not
gosh, you're like, you're like going 20% in a day, and like you're leveraged, maybe you're 5x or maybe you're 10x. So that's 200%. You just X'd yourself twice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's been a fun ride.
Yes, that's big money. So I wanted to tune into Assange here and see what we had going on, Julian, the great Julian Assange. It is just absolutely horrible, in my opinion, what's going on. We're going to be coming back into commercials, off the commercials on Smart Money TV. So I just want to cue it up here. Make sure to follow us, guys. If you're not, I mean, at this point, actually, you're probably watching us on one of our either X or YouTube or something like that. But
Yes.
if you are, make sure to follow us at on our accounts. Matt Dixon is MD Trade. David Porter is at Sir David Porter, and I am, of course, Networks Manager. I posted this earlier here, the WikiLeaks.
We're reaching huge distribution.
Yeah, we are getting huge distribution. It's true. And I know some of you guys we've spoken to over the last few days and talking about your different launches and products and everything else. We're reaching millions. We have millions of potential people there in Texas and Louisiana. There's trillions. There's actually trillions of dollars of disposable income in that area, and then as well, of course, around the world where we reach from our stream. But that area in particular, Texas, is very liquid area. So we'll be coming off a commercial in about 30 seconds here. Great Julian Assange is absolutely just crazy what's going on over there. Let me just start playing this screen. And I will try to have Stella or somebody else come on and join us in the afternoon show. We will have Rice Crypto is planning on joining us as well.
Big Rice. Buttered rice.
About the New York Times and the
well, you know, he's a real freedom. He's always been a freedom fighter.
We see the silence. We don't
anyway.
see any kind
So
of
this is a
public
live feed.
condemnation. As I said, I was lucky because my union.
I'm just going to reload this page. Make sure we have the latest.
Targeted. Few of them will file criminal complaints or will ask for condemnation, public statement from their unions. So, I mean, this silence is really of concern, you know?
Yeah, I actually have I have the images of Ellen Nakashima, the Washington Post correspondent's phone that were taken by UC Global as they opened it and took all of the information they would need to hack into her phone. I have images of Anthony Lowell Bergman, who was the New York Times correspondent, being spied on inside the embassy. And we hear complete silence from these media institutions about this taking place. As Stefania said, if Vladimir Putin and his intelligence agencies were behind this, it would be a gigantic international scandal. It's really remarkable how the U.S. media, which poses as independent, the Washington Post says on its banner, democracy dies in darkness, is so willing on an almost individual level to shroud this case in darkness. It almost makes you question whether it's real because it's so scandalous, it's so criminal, and they won't touch it. I'll provide one more detail before I go that relates to something Stefania mentioned, which was that Balthazar Garcon, who was the head of Julian Assange's legal team, was followed by UC Global spies when he went to pick up the former Ecuadorian president, Rafael Correa, at Barajas Airport in Madrid, Spain. I actually have a intelligence report that was apparently personally written by David Morales in English on following them. And why was it written in English? I mean, he wasn't writing this for the Ecuadorians. It's obvious he was writing it for American intelligence. They were photographed inside Garcon's home. You know, this was taking place outside the embassy, targeting former world leaders and the lead lawyer for a publisher who had not been convicted of any crime at that point. And according to a former UC Global employee, in November 2017, again, remember, Morales is just following orders here. He proposed breaking into the Madrid office of Baltasar Garzón in order to, in the words of the employee, obtain relevant information about Mr. Assange and give it to the Americans. Okay, this is November 2017. December 18th, 2017, El País, the Spanish daily, reported that 3 hooded men dressed in black broke into Garzón's office, took no money, but according to the paper, shuffled through documents. So put 2 and 2 together here. This is a global criminal ring, pretty obviously being run by the CIA against lawyers, against journalists, completely subverting freedom of speech around the world, attorney-client privilege, all to destroy a publisher who embarrassed them. And once again, American media is allowing whatever's left of democracy to die in darkness.
Wow.
Thanks, Max. We have a question from Joe Lauria at Consortium News, who asks, how did the Americans get Ecuador to cancel the immunity plan? And do you have any details, Max? So last question for you before you and Stefania have to head off. I'm hoping Stefania will stay for a few minutes longer if she can.
Thanks, and thanks to Joe for everything Consortium News is doing on this issue. Well, as I said before, basically the spying on the embassy and Julian and his legal team enabled the U.S. to foil the plan to get Julian diplomatic immunity so he could leave the embassy under the auspices of the Vienna Conventions. This was a secret plan. It required total secrecy. It appears, based on what I know about the plan, that Julian was just going to get in a car awaiting diplomatic vehicle one day, and he was going to be out of there. And if anyone wanted to arrest him, they would have to completely violate the sanctity of diplomatic immunity and sovereignty, and it would have created a massive international incident. It would have been, tantamount to an act of war. And so the secrecy of the plan was completely disrupted. Therefore, if Julian had stepped foot outside the embassy, he could have just been arrested then. So that's what I think took place. And as I mentioned, Todd Chapman, who was then the U.S. ambassador to Ecuador, was actually threatening Ecuadorian officials about the plan.
Revoking the immunity in relation to allowing the British to enter the embassy.
Well, this was political as well. I mean, this is almost unprecedented, and we have to recognize we've done a ton of reporting on what's taking place in Ecuador at the gray zone. Lenin Moreno, who was the successor to Rafael Correa, and I know Fidel can probably speak with more authority about this, was basically what Correa correctly called a Trojan horse for the U.S. and the IMF. He had an IMF loan being dangled before him that the U.S. controlled, and he was being told, give up Assange. And what he has subsequently done since coming in is arrest Jorge Glass, the former vice president of Correa, sentenced Correa in absentia to 8 years, basically targeting all of his political enemies who also happened to be people the U.S. was targeting. And on the same day that Julian Assange was arrested, April 11th, Ola Bini, a friend of Julian Assange, was arrested by Moreno's security services inside Ecuador and denied any due process for weeks and weeks. So basically you had someone come into in Ecuador who was a vassal of Washington, who willingly allowed the sovereignty of his country to be violated by a foreign police force, the British police, which were itself controlled basically by the U.S. Department of Justice. If you scroll to the end of my piece, you'll see photographs taken inside the courtroom during the first round of hearings on Julian's extradition. And someone who was inside the court provided me with photos of Americans in the courtroom who were seated behind the British prosecutors, basically whispering instructions into their ears, who appeared to be U.S. Department of Justice employees. So the U.S. is running this whole case. The whole thing is run by U.S. intelligence, as far as I can tell, and that means Lenin Moreno's government as well.
Thanks, Max.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Thank you. Stefania, one of the comments we've always seen is that the reason the mainstream media is so silent is because when the government draws the line, they are not anywhere near the line, and they are happy to move back. And of course, except for a few exceptional journalists like Peter Oborn and others, and John Pilger, for example, there aren't very many journalists who have commented in the way you have done or others have done. Could you say a little bit, if you have any thoughts on why the alternative media, which, whether they are revealing environmental crimes or whether they're revealing crimes in relation to other kind of criminality against women, against children, etc., they should also be afraid, because if not the mainstream media, at least they should be afraid about the government setting these boundaries. Do you have any thoughts about why the alternative media is silent?
Well, I'm not sure, because I can tell you my experience in this case. From the very beginning, this case has been, has been very weird, because we knew from the very beginning that Julian Assange and the WikiLeaks journalists were obvious targets, and we knew that they were targeted by all sorts of legal and extra-legal procedures. At the same time, even if this was very clear from the very beginning, there was little public outrage. There was a little public reaction, public debate on this. So, and of course, then the demonization campaign of Julian Assange made the rest, because one of the reasons why Julian Assange there is very little solidarity due to the demonization campaign against Julian Assange. But why the alternative media, why the other media don't work on this case? I really don't know. It's I don't know. I realize that there is very little journalism. If you consider, for example, my freedom of information litigation, I decided to go for it because back in 2015, no one had done it. So no journalist had tried to get the documents about this case, which was unbelievable. It was so high profile, and dozens of articles about the most absurd things, but no one had tried to get the documents, not even the so-called independent media, which is quite unbelievable, because you expect the mainstream media not going for it, but you expect the so-called independent media get the documents, not even them. So it's very depressing, and that's why I insist with this Freedom of Information Act litigation, because I feel the duty. A man has been in prison, has lost his freedom immediately as he published documents revealing war crimes, and he has spent 10 years confined, initially under house arrest, then in the embassy, then now in a prison, and no one tried to get the facts about this case, and I cannot accept this. That's why I insist and go ahead with this Freedom of Information Act litigation, because
I'm going to pull away from there. Obviously we're running out of time. The main thing here is that we have out of control government. I'll tell you what, some of the stuff that we were talking about earlier, I don't even want to get into, but the different countries involved, of course, it's the same usual suspects, the same people that are bombing right now. You can put that together. We have our military industrial complex, which we have been warned about, is really, really, it's taken over the whole culture of who we are as a people and who we are as countries. And everybody needs to, in my opinion, pray for Julian Assange that he's let go. He's in bad health. Let the man go home. It's absolutely, it is travesty of justice as this man has been held for this long. So pray for him. We'll be back. We are still trying to get some his wife Stella, as well as I reached out to some of the other people to join us in 5 hours. We'll be back on your TV, 11 a.m. in Texas, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, 5 p.m. there in Ireland. We are signing off. David, cheers.
Fantastic. See you guys soon.
Your voice is powerful. When combined with social engagement, it's a force for change. Decentralized media paired with free speech is the catalyst for an empowered world and a unified, invaluable ecosystem. Join Global Boost, become a champion of free speech, and help to reshape the future of media.